Again, welcome to today's webinar, Never Leave a Customer Behind, Scalable Web Apps with AWS. Our presenter is Adam Glick, Product Marketing Manager with Amazon Web Services. Adam, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you who have joined us today. Appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to tune in and learn about AWS and what we can do to help you with your website scalability. As mentioned, I'm Adam Glick. I'm a Solutions Marketing Manager here at Amazon. Been working at Amazon for a little over a year here. Before that, I actually worked in engineering and did engineering for many years. So hopefully we'll be able to touch some of the technical pieces, but really want to focus on what the value can be for you. With that, let's get started. When you think about Amazon Web Services, it's important to lay the groundwork and help you understand that there's a number of different layers to that so that you understand all that AWS provides you. Now, if you look at this kind of simplified layering structure that you see here, we'll start at the bottom here with the global infrastructure. AWS allows you to focus on the scalability of what you do best, and the global infrastructure we do helps take a lot of the undifferentiated heavy lifting pieces out. So when you think about things like building a data center, utilities, security for that, all the locations that you have around not only the United States but around the world that we provide all of that to people on demand. And so that global infrastructure is instantaneously available for you to scale up as your needs require. And not only scale up but also scale down, as we'll talk about. Then the first layer when you think about networking is how you make those connections. So not just the yellowish boxes that you see in the middle, but what are you doing from a networking standpoint? Providing firewalling security groups to allow you to control who's connecting, how they're connecting, providing you DNS services. We have a service called Route 53 that allows you to do zero TTL access to your DNS services and really control the network environment. Same thing with doing internal addressing. So if you're extending your applications, say from your existing site, into the cloud, you can use your private addressing space and not just have to use public IP addressing. In the orangish boxes, you'll notice what people a lot of times think of as the cloud computing services. So that's compute, your ability to have virtual machines in the cloud. Currently, Amazon provides 29 different sizes, from very, very small to extremely large. When I say extremely large, we're talking 244 gigabytes of RAM, I believe, is our largest size. You can even have clusters of computers. So very large amounts of compute power that's available on demand for you to scale up and scale down as you need. Likewise with storage. There's massive amounts of storage that's available, petabytes and petabytes of storage for you to be able to put files, information, backups, whatever you need in the cloud and make those either locally available within your enterprise or externally available to customers or through your applications. And then database pieces. We offer a number of database solutions, either NoSQL solutions like DynamoDB or SQL-based solutions. We have a relational database service, and you can choose to run the engine of Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, or Postgres on it. So you can choose what database engine you find best. There's even data warehousing with a product we call Amazon Redshift, which uses a Postgres SQL language, although it's not necessarily Postgres on the back end, for you to be able to do petabyte scale data warehousing. Above that, you can think of application services, and these are things that, again, help you scale and make things faster and easier. Queuing services, email services, your ability to do things with large data sets. So if you think of your ability to not only do, like, say, Hadoop-based workloads with the product we call Elastic MapReduce, pardon me, but also real-time data with the product Amazon Kinesis to allow you to bring in real-time information and work on it. There's a lot of services that are available. In total, we have over 35 of them. And so I don't plan to go through all of those today. That'd be way too much to go through. But understand that as you learn more about Amazon Web Services and how you can scale, there's more and more services that are available to help you do that more effectively and more efficiently. And the final layer is about deployment and administration. So it's one thing to get your service, your website up and running in the cloud. It's another to maintain and manage that. And we provide several services that allow you to do that, whether it be deploying it to make it very easy for you to take like a Java-based application, web application, and just simply deploy that without having to manage any of the servers or services, or have your servers and services running and be able to automatically manage the scaling of those services and servers as they grow and shrink depending on the demand, and your ability to manage all that, follow it up, be able to version your infrastructure the same way that you version your code. So many services that are available to you, and many of them that are available at no extra charge above the basic compute, storage, and database resources that you're using to allow you to scale and be more efficient and effective in what you do. So let's talk about web applications and websites. I want to break these into three categories because they're not all the same. So think of these as kind of, in varying levels of complexity. From on the far left, things that are fairly uncomplex, like static websites. And this is information that you can put in Amazon Simple Storage Service. So this is static content. Think of these images, PDFs, video files. It's also things that don't change a lot, like blogs or basic product pages. You see a lot of organizations that do, say, a very simple site because their application is a mobile application, or they're a small business. And the great part about these is these very static, non-changing websites are things that people can put up on Amazon S3 and literally run for pennies a month. They're very inexpensive and highly scalable. And you don't even have to manage a server for it. If you're using tools like Octopress, for instance, or Jekyll, and that's where what we do with our blog, to be able to post those things and make them available to people at extremely low cost and extremely high scale. Kind of the next step up from that is website hosting. If you're using a content management system, say for instance, I've listed a couple here that are very popular, WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, DNN, which used to be known as .NET New, Typo3, just to name a few of them. And these are common ways that people build websites and manage their content. All of these are easy to run on top of Amazon Web Services. Indeed, there's the AWS Marketplace, which has pre-configured versions of many common pieces of software. And so rather than going and setting up a machine and then going and installing the software and configuring it, they can be pre-configured and ready for you to run. And then finally, people who are running dynamic websites, websites where the website is the core of your business. Maybe it's e-commerce, or maybe you've got specialized applications, how you're interacting with your customers and the people that visit. And this is what you typically think of as just a server that someone uses. And you can take our instances and you can build them quickly and easily. You can use templates to build them out and literally stamp them out like a machine. And also the ability to customize whatever you need within that instance. You get SSH if you're using Linux, or remote desktop if you're using Windows, access to the box as an administrator, and you can install whatever software you like to build custom applications that meet exactly your customers' needs. So when we think of how people are using this, and when we think about how they use it and how they scale, I want to talk about 6 companies. So with each of these, we'll talk about different ways that they're using AWS to scale, and also show that they do these in different industries. So for instance, let's start with e-commerce. So in this case, we take a look at Etsy. So Etsy is an online retailer, and they sell homemade and handcrafted goods online. They've built their entire infrastructure on top of Amazon Web Services. Gaming, another example is Ubisoft, and we'll talk about them. They're a gaming company that's made some great games. I, as a gamer, enjoy some of them myself, and they've been able to speed their time to market. With social sites, we can talk about companies like Pinterest and what they've done with pinboards and how they utilize scalable storage in order to be able to handle the very large number of objects that they work with. Video and photo sharing, SocialCam is actually a mobile app that does video and social sharing, and the ability to share those and make their site move quickly to AWS and scale fast. Netflix, who does digital video distribution, lets people watch videos and television shows. And Reddit, which is a forum online for people to interact and just show kind of the breadth of different kinds of sites you can build and the kind of massive scale that you can achieve by using Amazon Web Services. So let's talk about each of these. So if we start taking a look at Etsy, Etsy not only uses us for website, but they use us for big data. And when I say big data, that's their ability to scale to handle all the different data points that they have coming into their system. So they run an online marketplace, and rather than having to build up their own big data storage and analytics, Hadoop infrastructure, they were able to spin that up with Amazon Web Services. So no procuring big machines, no going in and having to configure each of it. They literally just start up Amazon Elastic MapReduce. That spins up the Hadoop instances for them, and they can start doing the value-added work on top of it right away. Ubisoft, as I mentioned, close to my heart as someone who enjoys some of the games, they use us to develop and launch more quickly. So when you think about scale, one is about your website scaling up and down. Another part of scale is scaling your resources, your developers, your IT staff. How much can they scale? How much can they handle? So Ubisoft traditionally launched AAA title games. You may know some of them like the Assassin's Creed series or Far Cry series. And those are AAA titles that launch on a 1 to 2 year time frame. But they were able to start launching games much more quickly because there was no need to build up infrastructure, to go through the procurement cycles, to go and set those things up. With AWS, they could just launch it. And so they launched 10 games in 18 months, which was a huge increase in velocity for the gaming world. When we talk about Pinterest, Pinterest is a very large social network. And it's a social network based upon people finding pictures of things that they think are interesting online and then doing what they call pinning, or putting that on their pin board. Somewhat like what you might have used a corkboard and actual push pins in the past, and it's a virtual version of it. It's an extremely popular site, and they store a tremendous amount of data. So they told us when we talked to them, they're storing 410 terabytes of data. That's 8 billion objects stored in Amazon's simple storage service. And AWS helps them scale that easily. They didn't have to go and think about, well, what are their storage needs? What do they have to do for procurement? They didn't have to over provision. They didn't have to think about, well, what do we have to do for disaster recovery and have multiple copies of this available so that people never lose their data. They can quickly and easily scale up to very large scale here, as you can see by the numbers, without the need to think about all those other pieces. They can spend their time, rather than managing infrastructure, they spend their time managing users, their application, and growing. I mentioned SocialCam before. SocialCam makes a mobile application to allow people to share video and images. And they've scaled up to run on 2 million phones. So they've got a pretty solid user base there. And they moved to AWS in one evening. So this is about moving quickly and their ability to move quickly so that they can grow fast. They were able to move over one day and able to continue growing and take that constraint out of their website and their application. Netflix is always one of my favorites. They've used us for many things. The Netflix infrastructure is built on top of AWS. In this case, I want to talk to you about how they've increased reliability and efficiency. And they've done that in order of magnitude. That they are 10 times more reliable than they were when they were not using AWS. So the ability to use AWS to grow and scale, but also grow in terms of the reliability that your customer's experience can have. You can grow up in those different pieces. And when you think about the scale that Netflix provides, there are some estimates where people talk about the percentage of traffic in the United States in kind of the evening hours, and we're talking double-digit percentage of entire network traffic that's consumer-based traffic on the internet is all coming out of Netflix. That's incredible scale for an organization to grow to, and the ability to do that on demand and scale up and down as needed, so they don't pay for those resources when they're not using them, say when many people are at work. And all that's facilitated by using the AWS cloud. So finally, in this set of examples, I want to talk about Reddit. Reddit's a social news site and forum, and they handle a tremendous amount of traffic. So 4 billion page views a month. And they did that with only 20 employees. And that's because they were able to scale their applications so quickly with AWS, and they could spend their employees' time focusing on the value-added things that their users care about. There's a great case study that's on our website if you want to go take a look after the webinar, where Reddit talks about when they did an Ask Me Anything, so it's a live Q&A with the President of the United States. So as you can imagine, when someone announces that they're going to do a live Q&A with the President of the United States, the website traffic grows tremendously. In this case, they saw 3 times their already high volume of traffic, and they did this for just a couple of hours. And ask yourself, what does it take to make sure that your website is ready to handle 3 times the traffic it normally handles, but you only need to do it for a couple of hours? How do you do that? With cloud services like AWS, that's simple. You just scale up to the additional servers that you need to handle the traffic, and when you're done, you scale back down. It's one of the great things about cloud services, that ability to scale and grow in ways that traditional infrastructure has not allowed you to do. So let's talk about AWS and talk about scaling a little more directly. I want to talk about the traditional capacity planning model. So this is the way that many people procure their hardware, do their planning, and think about what they need to do in terms of their infrastructure on a monthly and yearly basis. So we'll take an example of a company. We won't name any names. And we'll just take a look at a simple graph. We'll say, here's their server capacity. So this is what their servers are doing right now. And we'll look at this kind of over time. Think of each bar as a month, but it could be any time frame that you like. So the number of page views they have. So this is their server capacity, and then we'll take a look at what was actual traffic that they saw in this example. And we'll track that by this line. So the gray area you see here is unutilized capacity. These are servers that are sitting there that are not doing anything. You bought them because you needed to have a certain amount of buffer, and typically people target, anywhere from 50% buffer, sometimes a little less than that, to be able to handle spikes, to be able to handle things that happen. And so this organization actually is doing pretty well if you take a look at what their utilization is. That they've got some unutilized servers, but not too bad. And you can see their traffic is growing. That's a good thing. So they see that growing. They're worried about that buffer space. What if they get a spike? And the marketing department has told them they've got a promotion coming up. And so they need to add some capacity. So they've got their traditional capacity, what you see in yellow here, but they've bought some new capacity. And that's what you see in light blue. So they bought some new capacity to be able to handle the additional traffic that they're expecting for this promotion. Now, of course, they've made that planning ahead of time, not knowing what the traffic will actually be. So let's see what happens when the customers show up. So in this case, they grew, but they grew at the same rate that they did before. So they've got more buffer now, but there's a whole lot of extra machine power that's just sitting there idle. And of course, the month after that, the promotion's over, but the machines, they've still been purchased. And so you still see their capacity is now at that new level of what they've purchased as we see what their customer traffic looks like. Well, it dips down a little bit because the promotion's over. And you can see as the months go on, then their traffic starts coming back. It could be for any number of reasons. Many businesses are very cyclical. This isn't a surprise, but your hardware isn't cyclical in a traditional model the same way that your customer cycle might be. So all that gray that you're seeing there, that's all unutilized capacity. Those are servers that are sitting idle doing nothing but depreciating. And so now this particular organization is coming up on the big time in their sales cycle in the year. So in this case, they're expecting a large increase. Marketing has told them they're going to have a very large promotion coming up. They need to be prepared for this. So once again, they've got their traditional infrastructure, and they've bought some additional infrastructure, even more this time, to be able to be prepared for the large volume of traffic that they're expecting. So let's see what happens when the customers show up. Well, in this case, more customers showed up than they expected. In this case, well more. So they'd underestimated what the actual needs were. It was much more successful, and thus you have this dark blue box that shows you all the additional capacity they would have needed. Now this is a terrible situation because your customers are going to get a bad experience. And it's not just the people in the dark blue box that get the bad experience here. That's the additional capacity that was to serve all of them. But because all of those people are showing up to your site at once, everyone has a bad experience. You may have seen times when people go to a website and it becomes so popular the website is no longer available. And the website goes down. So not only do you miss out on your customers that came to you who are part of the capacity you planned, you miss out on all of your customers. They all have a bad experience, and this is the worst scenario. So what happens the month after that? Well, we'll assume that no panic buying ensues to try and fill the gap, because you can't fill. It's very hard to bring servers online and build up that capacity in the midst of it. Your procurement cycle takes months. So they go back. You now have the additional capacity that was bought. That's now your standard capacity, but you're past the promotion. So once again, you're back down to the traffic level a little above where you were previously. But there's a ton of unused capacity that's there. And as you can see, that unused capacity keeps growing and growing. And as you grow that, that means that your costs grow and grow. And those are costs of unutilized hardware. This is the challenge with traditional capacity planning. Let's take a look at what the cloud does that's different. So with AWS, you get capacity without planning. What does this look like? Well, let's take a look at the same graph, or I should say the same usage. So we're going to look at the same thing. What you notice is each month, the capacity directly matches what the needs are. You can literally purchase only the capacity you need, and you can do it not just on a monthly basis, you do it on an hourly basis. So hour by hour, what are the needs that you have? You can purchase that hardware, and that allows you to scale up so that that promotion that your marketing department was running, you can handle all the traffic that comes into that. But also means that when you've got a month when it's a down cycle for your business, you don't pay for a bunch of hardware, you don't maintain a bunch of hardware, you don't depreciate a bunch of hardware that you don't need to. Only pay for what you use. And that is one of the big takeaways for what cloud computing can do in terms of scale to help your business. Let's take a look at Expedia. So Expedia is another company born and run on the web. They allow you to book all sorts of travel arrangements and hotel online, and they used the scale of the web to be able to actually increase the performance of their website. So not only do they ensure that they're highly scalable when they're built on top of AWS, but they're able to decrease their latency. They decrease their latency to under 50 milliseconds of response time and increase their CPU efficiency. And that CPU efficiency comes to that scaling question again, because remember, it's a matter of a CPU that's sitting there running idle, that gray section in the chart that we looked at. That CPU is nothing but wasted time and energy. And they were able to be much more efficient with it as they buy it. I want to show you one other example. So we showed you the fictitious example of the graph we just showed. I want to show you actual data from a company called DevSisters. So DevSisters is a small gaming company, and they were nice enough to share some of their data of how they scale up and down with AWS. So in this case, we're looking at a 24-hour period. So again, we're not even looking at a month here. We're taking a look at a day. So they do this every day, and they see that their user base grows and shrinks during the day. Not surprising that at 3 in the morning, they probably have less users than they have at, say, 8 at night. So taking a look at this graph, you can see that they run a baseline of 2 instances. From an architectural standpoint, that's always a good design to never have less than 2 machines. That makes sure that you're highly available in case there's a problem with one of your servers. You maintain access for your users to be able to continue to access your services while you bring another one up. And again, on infrastructure, that would mean your IT department would go and run and try and figure out what's wrong with it. In AWS, it just means you shut down the one that's not working, start up one that is. Instant availability of resources changes the constraint model to allow you to scale and grow and provide high availability, disaster recovery, and capture all the traffic that you need. So what's interesting is they start with kind of a baseline of 2. But as you see in the red line is their actual demand. So you see that goes up. And what do you see? You see the number of instances grow right along with that demand. So they went from 2 instances all the way up to 60. So there's a 30-fold increase that they grow in terms of the size of what people are using. That's a massive scale increase. And then what happens? When that goes away, they scale it all right back down again. So just like you saw in the theoretical graph, this is the actual graph of someone doing it and doing it on a daily basis. And this is the kind of thing that you can achieve when you use AWS's cloud services to be able to remove the constraint of capacity planning and make sure that you 100% utilize all of what you need. One of the great parts of this is it lets you to focus on what you do best. When I spoke earlier on the layers, I talked to you about kind of that foundational layer and about we take care of a lot of the facilities pieces. You don't need to rack and stack servers. You don't need to swap out broken hard drives. You don't need to, set up a new rack, plan a new facility, hire security to patrol it, come up with your security procedures. How are you going to protect those pieces? All that's undifferentiated. Every company needs to do those things. We do it for you. You don't need to. You don't worry about those things. So instead of spending time and money building those pieces out, you can focus on what differentiates your website, your web application, and your organization. So you can have very small IT staffs that are incredibly efficient at what they do because your IT staff is focused on high-value pieces. They can focus on the architecture of your organization's data. They can focus on making sure that your security procedures are well performed, that you're managing large fleets of servers in ways that are scalable for you the same way that we make your website scalable. Taking a look at another customer example there, Dow Jones. So Dow Jones was taking a look at how they could spend less, run their data centers better, and they moved over one of their data centers that they were running in Asia. And they moved it from on-premises to move it to the cloud to save $40,000 and do that faster for them. Again, getting scale out of their resources, out of their money, and leveraging that geographic scale. What happens when you want to expand to a new region? We'll talk about the different regions that are available. What does it take to spin up a new data center, possibly a local subsidiary that you either need to create or work with in order to build up that data center and that data and your data flow? What if you could remove all of that and simply have access to those resources right now through your computer? That's what AWS provides you, the ability to scale geographically. And also it's important to note that we provide a freedom of choice. It's a core principle in what we do that we want to help you and your business be more successful. And that means that you can pick whatever you want. Whatever the language that your development teams work in is fine. Whatever operating system you're most comfortable with, fine. We offer several different versions of Linux. We offer Windows in several different versions. We offer BSD. You can choose what you want to run on your machines. You can choose to write in .NET or Ruby or Java or Python or PHP or Node or any number of languages because you have full access to the machines, the same way that you would do with any infrastructure. Just like if you bought a box and put it into your data center or a co-location facility, you have the same access. All we've removed is the procurement time on that, the management time to go and take care of that undifferentiated heavy lifting. You get to pick everything else. We offer a bunch of services, like I said, over 35 services to simplify and speed that. So if you want to take advantage of things like our, say, relational database service that you can set to automatically take backups and set up disaster recovery sites or automatically scale your database. Think about the challenges of when you build a database, typically you buy the biggest box that you can because databases don't generally scale without going in and doing things like sharding, which are very labor intensive and very difficult to do correctly. We allow you to just scale up. You can put it on a certain size box, and when you decide, I need a larger instance, I need more memory, I need more CPU, I need more I/O, you can just go and make that change. And if you're using something like our relational database service, we help transition that data over for you so you don't have to go through that big process. We make it easy for you to set up and configure these pieces, and we have thousands of partners in the AWS marketplace. So if you want to use a piece of software that you're traditionally used to, and you don't want to go through the configuration pieces, you can buy it from our marketplaces. In many cases, the licensing is already included in the per hour charge that you pay. So you can utilize traditional line of business software that you're used to, and you can roll that out the same way on the same per hour model that we talk about that allows you to scale. So when we talk about scale, I like to use the example of Shazam. So for those of you that know Shazam, they're an application that listens to sound and traditionally has been used to, you listen to a piece of music, you hold up your phone that has it on it, it will tell you what the song is. Great if you're listening to the radio and you hear a song that you really like, and you want to know what it is so you can buy it later. Shazam has moved beyond that and has also started to work with TV shows and commercials. And they did a bunch of work with companies that were doing commercials during the Super Bowl. Now when you think about kind of the ultimate explosion in terms of spikes of traffic, the Super Bowl has got to be one of the quintessential examples of that. Tremendous numbers of people all watching the same event, seeing the same advertisement at the same time, and taking action on that, in this case with an application that's on people's phones right there. And so they looked at us and they said, who has the suite of services that are going to help them be able to do this and be able to scale to doing it? And AWS provided that to them. They actually used CC2 instances you see listed. That's our clustered compute instances. And so that's actually, they're spinning up hundreds of clustered servers that they build up, they ran during their Super Bowl promotion, and then we're able to scale that back down. It's like having an additional data center or supercomputer that you can spin up as needed and then shut off and not have to pay for and not have to manage and maintain. You don't pay any of that capital upfront expense. It's all just pay as you go. So I mentioned the global infrastructure, and as you expand globally, we're always expanding. Currently, we have 10 regions available worldwide. They're shown on the map here. So wherever it is that you need to be able to help your customers be, you can see the stars that we provide, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in South America, in North America, even China region that we announced earlier this year. And so if you're doing business or growing your business in China, we provide an AWS region in China. So you can pick the region that, and these are geographically separated regions, that makes the most sense for you and your business. You can have your data located in these regions, and that data is not shared outside of that region unless you choose it to be. So you can expand your operations as you grow your organization without the need to think about how do you set up a data center in these other locations, what does it mean for them, and to make sure that your users get great experiences. If you see that you're growing in locations around the world, you can put your infrastructure closer to those users to make sure that they have a great experience. I mentioned 10 regions. Within each region, there's multiple availability zones, and you can think of an availability zone simply as a distinct area. So it's separated from other availability zones in the area. It has a separate connection to the internet. It's not like having two things in the same data center. They're actually separated in different localities. So when you think about designing highly available and scalable web applications, you can make sure that even within a region that you make those highly available with the ability to scale out to multiple availability zones within. And indeed, that's the best practice. We recommend that you start with at least 2 availability zones for any application that you're building in order to ensure high availability. And there's also 51 edge locations, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about scaling your content delivery. So I wanted to talk about the Motley Fool. Motley Fool is a financial services website, and they used AWS to grow strategically. They were taking a look at how they were going to grow in Australia, and they wanted to build out their operations in Australia, and rather than go and build data centers and maintain that, they used AWS to build out their site in Australia to make sure it's performant and available to the Australian public without going through the whole process of planning a new set of facilities in another country. Made it fast and easy for them and increased improved the load time, decreased the load page time for people that came to their site who are coming from Australia. And they did that by 30%. So I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on the cost factor of all this. And AWS is unique in that it gives you the ability to change your cost model to something other than what you're normally used to. So one thing is that AWS requires no upfront costs. Unlike buying infrastructure, where there's a huge upfront cost in order to build whatever it is, regardless of what comes of it, you only pay for what you use. You sign up online and you can start today. No upfront cost to it. On top of that, you have tiered pricing. So the more you use of certain resources, say S3 storage, the more storage you use, the less per unit it costs you. So if you think of other times, this really turns on its head the model that you think of. So if you think about building out your storage, maybe you've got a SAN or a NAS. As you add more and more storage, well, you've got to pay for more and more bays. You've got to pay for more and more location. Your costs go up. But with AWS, your costs actually go down per unit with tiered pricing. We also require no long-term contracts. You can sign up with AWS, use it for a month, and then not use it again. You're not required or locked in any way. We earn your business every day. And along with that is the pay-as-you-go model. You pay by the hour. So like, not only is there no long-term contract, you literally pay for just the hours that you use. Beyond that, we consistently drop prices. So Just at the beginning of this month, we had our 42nd price drop since we launched in 2006. So if you think about that, this may be one of the only examples where buying your infrastructure gets cheaper over time. You will, let's say, be running your website, and the cost of running that server actually drops over time. Again, a complete shift from how you've thought about traditional infrastructure. We also provide innovative ways that you can do costing and pricing. So things like spot instances. Spot instances you can think of like a stock market for our instances. So rather than, say, buying at the sticker price, you can see if there's excess capacity. And if there's excess capacity available, you can buy that. And this becomes quite cost effective if you're willing to buy instances that you need. This is great for if you're running, say, data analysis workloads, or ones where you only need things for a short period of time, or you're willing to be time delayed. You're willing to say, hey, I'm willing to wait a couple hours because I want to do it cheaper. And you can see discounts up to 90% buying in the spot instance market. So it's a great way to lower your costs even further. Reserve instances are another way. That if you know you're going to use a machine, let's say that you've got a steady state workload that you know you're going to be running all the time, you can save up 40%, sometimes even more, in buying a reserve instance and saying, hey, I want to reserve this instance, and I want to make sure that I have this and it's going to be available to me, that AWS is going to make that available, and for that, I'm going to get a discount because I'm going to commit to that period of time. And then finally, one of the really interesting things, because we have a dedication to lowering costs and to continuing to help our customers be more effective. We feel that's a flywheel, and that makes, when you're more profitable, when you're more effective in your IT, you're going to utilize us more. And so we have a program called Trusted Advisor. What Trusted Advisor is it's a tool that's part of support you can run, and it will actually tell you things about your infrastructure. Hey, this is a security setting that you might want to take a look at setting. Hey, this doesn't look like it's being well optimized. This system looks like it's not working as well. But amongst the checks that it will do is also cost checks. And it will actually take a look, and it will say, hey, you can save money and make cost recommendations on how you can actually save money with the infrastructure that you have. And we've had millions of dollars of savings to our customers by suggestions that we have made to them using Trusted Advisor to help them optimize their infrastructure. We want to help you utilize our resources in the best way possible, and we create tools to actually tell you when you might be overspending with us so that you can do it better. Again, very different than what you're used to. One other example scale I want to give, and this is political campaigns. Now, political campaigns are another one of these workloads where things change so dramatically, where there can be very little traffic, and then as you get close to the campaign time, the traffic goes incredibly large, and then after a campaign, it typically tapers back off. One of those examples would be the Obama campaign. So the Obama campaign in 2012 built their site on top of AWS. And that worked out for them to be a great solution. They were allowed to build the environment they needed. They were able to scale incredibly high. Again, this is another one of those instances where scalability was so critical to them, and they were able to scale up in a way that they never could have been able to buy enough servers to be able to do it. And at the end of the campaign, they were able to scale it right back down. That scalability, so critical for high growth. And they were able to do that all with Amazon Web Services to help them save on their costs, in this case, millions in what it would have cost them if they had to buy that. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to touch on a little bit, kind of some of the higher level services, things like deployment and management. So 3 services that we provide, Elastic Beanstalk, OpsWorks, and CloudFormation, really help you with the deployment piece. So if you're not doing that, those kind of 3 different websites, the static, the CMS-based, or if you're really building out your own application, Elastic Beanstalk allows you to take your application that you've built and put it out in the cloud without having to worry about managing the servers or configuring it or understanding the infrastructure pieces of it. You could write, say, a Java application or a .NET application, Ruby, Python, whatever the languages that you want. There's many supported. And you just take your application, you package it up, and you send it to us in Elastic Beanstalk. And we just deploy it. And we don't charge anything for Elastic Beanstalk. We provide it as a free service. You only pay for the underlying resources that you're using, say, the load balancers or the actual compute or storage that you're using. So it's a great way if you have developers who are developing pieces of your website and just want to deploy that quick and easily without having to worry about the infrastructure piece of it. OpsWorks allows you, it's a little different, allows you to model what you're doing, so you can actually define what are the layers of your application. You can define what those are, how you want it to scale. You can set very specific scaling rules, and you can manage those pieces. So when you think about doing things like key rotation or the ability to get a health check dashboard, OpsWorks provides a lot more management, monitoring, and control of your applications that you roll out. And again, that's provided at a service at no additional cost. You just pay for the underlying resources, and this helps you get up and manage and run your applications in a more effective way. And CloudFormation is really interesting because it allows you to version your infrastructure the same way that you do code. You can basically run a tool called CloudFormer, again, no additional charge for it, and it will take whatever infrastructure you built in AWS, and it will create a template of that's what it looks like. So if you needed to make a carbon copy of it, you could literally then take that template, load it into CloudFormation, and it would spin up the exact same set of infrastructure. This is great for when you think about you're making big changes or you want to try things. You've come up with an infrastructure that you like and you want to be able to document, okay, this version of our code goes with this version of our infrastructure. How do these pieces fit together? CloudFormation allows you to literally take a text file. You'll get a text file. It's actually JSON for the technically inclined code. And you can pull that out and you can store that along with your code. So you can actually have everything it would take to spin up what your website was for, say, disaster recovery. If you need to spin it back up and something happened, you just go, you run the CloudFormation script, all of your servers come online, you put your code up there, your code deploys, and you're up and running. CloudFormation is a great complement to OpsWorks or Elastic Beanstalk. So I talked about delivery. We talked about the 10 sites that are around the world, but it's important to understand that one of the great ways to scale is a content distribution network. Now quickly, what a CDN is, or content distribution network, is a way that the information that you get, that comes off your servers, you can send to other machines to serve out. So think about like your website, your home page, the graphics on that page. If someone's coming to your computer, the instance that you have, every time that needs to serve up one of those images, one of those pages, as your site grows, you're going to have to add a lot of servers because for every person that comes there, it needs to serve that traffic. A content distribution network allows you to take that traffic off of your machines. So your machines only deal with the dynamic information. Say if someone has a shopping cart, if you're doing a transaction, or if they're accessing, a customer database, or they're looking at forms that are part of your site. Those are the things that your site needs to handle. The static graphics that you have, the website, the traffic speed up, all of that can be done through a content distribution network. And those are located, there's 51 sites currently. Again, we're always adding more. They're located around the world that take that load off of your server. So your server gets much more scalable because lots of the traffic that's being pulled off it is not coming to your server. It happens, we cache that, we keep copies of it at all these little blue dots around the globe. And because all these blue dots also have a very high dedicated network pipe to our data centers, it also means that you can have your operations in one geographic location and still serve content to people in other geographic locations with much lower latency. So as you think about scaling up, it is a great way to lower your cost and increase your customer experience by decreasing latency and increasing scale. And that's CloudFront, which is another service available from Amazon Web Services. A good example of that is Earth Networks. So Earth Networks uses CloudFront as their content distribution network, and they saved over 50% versus what they were doing previously. And so a great way for them to serve their customers better and also for them to decrease their costs while increasing performance. Content distribution networks are a great way when you think about your website to increase your scale while managing your costs. I did want to quickly touch on security. We won't go in depth in this particular webinar, but security is key to what we do. It's a shared security model, so since you have full control of everything that happens in the hypervisor in your machines, you can do all the same security procedures that you're used to doing when you have a physical box in your own data center. When it comes what's called below the hypervisor or outside of the software, we take care of things. And that means whether it be the premises, whether it means the ability to encrypt the storage that you're using, to give you security keys for accessing things over encrypted channels, using SSL, using SSH, making sure that you can give firewall rules to make sure who has access and who doesn't, to restrict users' rights and roles depending on who they are. So you can set a user, and they don't have, just as you wouldn't in your enterprise, make everybody an administrator on every box. You can do the same thing with cloud. You can say only certain users get access to only certain resources and can only do certain things. The same kind of way you can set up both users and groups that way. You can even do two-factor login if you want. Two-factor would be something you know and something that you have. It's like a password and one of those little password tokens you see people with the little codes on them. We fully support that. And the ability, like I said, to add all of your own security software and procedures on top of that. You don't need to take our word for it. You can see the list of certifications on the right that we've gone through to make sure that other organizations feel just as comfortable with what we're doing and that you know that we've passed those security audits so that if those are necessary for your business, you can see that we've passed them, whether it be ISO or whether if you're dealing with payment cards, you need PCI, SOX compliance, ITAR if you're working with governmental work, FIPS, even MPAA. We've written papers on how you can be in compliance with MPA workloads, and even the ability to protect your keys. So not listed here, but when we talk about the encryption keys, when you do encryption, like I said, I don't want to drill too deep into this, but the ability to put things into things like a hardware security module. So we provide a cloud service called Cloud HSM, which allows you to store your keys. Instead of being in memory, we store them in a tamper-resistant device. And the tamper-resistant device, basically, if someone tries to look in on what your network keys are, it kills the key. So you can make sure that your keys are secured. Whether you, of course, you could always choose to have them on your own premises and then extend your data center out through a VPN, but you can also do it within the cloud and make sure that it's stored in a secure way and it's not left in memory. Quickly, I'll go through a three-tier web application. And the way that you look at it here, you assume that you're starting kind of the bottom left as a user, and you can see that you can go through the content distribution network. That's CloudFront, and that speeds up the content of getting static resources, which is the box in kind of the top left, or you can go into the application piece, and that's the dynamic data. Someone once put this really well. They said, the things that come out of S3, you can think of that as things that don't wiggle, things that are static. And things that come out of the web services, those are things that wiggle. That's stuff that's moving. That's data that you're processing. You're giving people unique information when it comes to this. You have auto-scaling groups for your web servers that sit behind a load balancer. You're using virtual private cloud groups in order to do the local addressing space and to make sure that certain servers are not available through access on the internet. You have a second load balancer that deals with your business logic tier, your application servers. And then on the back end, you have a database. In this case, they're using RDS. But if you wanted, you can install your own database as well. We support both, along with that database, of course, has a backup copy to make sure that you're always designing things that are highly redundant. You see kind of a gray A and B that they're all sitting on top of. The A and B, those are availability zones that I talked about earlier. Again, that's about high availability. It's about disaster recovery, and it's about the ability to scale as your customers come in. If you want to learn more about websites, like what you heard, please stop by our website, aws.amazon.com/websites. There you can see videos. You can find out more about the services that are available. You can go through our Getting Started guides if you'd like to try it out. Lots of great information. Please check out the website if you want to know more. And finally, I wanted to kind of leave you with, when you're thinking about running a web application, one of the two times to think about it. One is migration. So you've got something that's currently running, and you need to improve your scale. You need to improve your availability. You're looking at, a hardware refresh. You need to reduce your costs, reduce your IT footprint, increase your security or performance. Those are great times to look at Amazon Web Services. The other time is when you're looking at new developments. You've got new websites and new applications that you're launching, and when you're looking at those new pieces, that's a great time to take a look at Amazon Web Services and say, hey, what can Amazon Web Services do for us? That we can try it out, we can go test it with this new set of services and not have to worry about how long is it going to take us to procure this. What if it's successful? What if it's not successful? What do we do around these? We remove those constraints to allow you to focus on what your particular organization's challenge are and be able to succeed at that. With that, I do a few poll questions for you, and I'll hand you back for those.
Great. Thank you, Adam, for a great presentation, and thanks to the audience for all of your questions. As Adam reviews your questions, let's launch a few poll questions today. Our first poll question is around our Amazon Web Services summits. As you can read here, Amazon holds multiple summits in different cities around the globe. Our question is, if you were to watch a live broadcast of an AWS summit, what online experience would you prefer? There are 4 choices on your screen. Of the 4 layouts below, which one of the following summit experiences would you prefer? Please take a look as I launch the poll question for you to complete this. I'm now closing the first poll question. Thank you for your responses. Next poll question. What is the topic you would like to learn next? I'm now closing the second poll question. 2 more questions to go. Next poll question, how effective was the presenter today? Thank you. One last poll question before we hand it off for Q&A. Overall, how satisfied are you with today's webinar? Thank you for taking these poll questions. Your feedback is appreciated and will help us better improve our webinar platforms. We will now start the Q&A. Adam, you have the floor.
Thank you. We have just a few minutes here, but I'll try and get through as many questions as I can. We have one question that says, is the AWS infrastructure compliant with security standards such as PCI DSS? The answer to that is yes. The slide that I showed shows a number of those. If you're interested in finding out more about AWS security, you can go to aws.amazon.com/security, and you'll see all of the different security certifications that we've achieved. You'll find those on the website there. But to answer the question, yes, we do have PCI certification in AWS, in Amazon Web Services. So next question. I'm not able to create EC2 instances in China. How do I use that region? China is a new region for us. There's 2 ways. You can go to amazonaws.com, which I believe is the website for the Chinese website, and you can sign up there. Or you can, if you're not certain of that, just do a search for China region on our website or even your favorite search engine. And if you do AWS China region, it'll be the result that comes up, and there'll be a link from our website that takes you there. Because of the rules in China and because it is a dedicated region that's separated, I mentioned that some of our regions are separated, you do have to go and sign up for an account through that site. It'll be the same APIs that you're used to. It'll be the same services you're used to, but regulations on how you work in China are slightly different, so you do need to sign up through that website to use the AWS China region. So next question, where can I find more information on software partnering offerings? So if you want to know more about partnering with AWS and the partner offers that are available, you can go to aws.amazon.com/partners. That will give you information if you're looking at partnering with AWS, whether you're a system integrator or an independent software vendor. You can also take a look at our partner program. You can sign up for our partner program and talk about how you get your information into the marketplace. If you're looking for partners, if there's particular software that you're looking for, then the great place to go is to go to our website and look at the marketplace. So if you go and you search for marketplace, you'll be taken to the AWS marketplace. And in there's a search box, and you can type in your search. There are thousands, literally thousands, of vendors that are available and offerings that are available in the marketplace. So it's a great place to search for both system integrators that you need to help you if you need help using AWS, or if there's a particular product that you're looking for. So, and I think this will have to be the final question, just because of time, and I thank you all for attending. How are most highly available customers with multiple instances replicating the latest data, the latest version of the web code from machine to machine? And they're asking, are they using a Git pull request? What I'll say is that that very much depends on who the customer is. Different customers use different source code repositories. So Git would be one way that people do it. Sometimes people have private repositories that they're using, or they're using a different source code management tool besides Git. So you could use a Git pull request if you want, but really that's going to vary on your application. If you want to take a look at how people are doing some of the deployment work and how they're managing that, if you look at aws.amazon.com/deployment, as well as aws.amazon.com/architecture, you can see the architectures that people are using for their different layouts, and also what kind of tools are available for that. If you want more information on that, it's also good to go to our YouTube channel. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you can look at all the presentations that we've done, both the webinars like this one, as well as presentations at our big events like reInvent and our summits. And so you can see what those are, and you can hear from customers how they do this and what their solutions are. And those are great ways to find those answers. Thank you very much for those questions, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate the time. I hope this was valuable for all of you.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to all our attendees. Within the next day or two, you will receive an email with the links to the recording and more information. If you have any comments on our previous and upcoming webinars, or suggestions on topics you wish AWS should cover in future webinars, please feel free to email aws-webcasts@amazon.com. Your feedback will help improve our webinar programming. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.